Welcome to the third episode of the Art of Lifting podcast. Today we have Millie. Did you want to introduce yourself?
Hi guys, I'm Millie, also known as Millie Lifts on Instagram. I'm a powerlifter in the under 76 kilo class.
Okay, perfect. First question, how long have you been powerlifting and kind of how did you get into powerlifting?
I've actually been powerlifting for 4 years now to this month. I got into powerlifting at university, but I kind of dabbled into it a little bit beforehand, but not properly. So I kind of say I've been powerlifting properly for 4 years, but kind of had like my feet in the water a little bit just before COVID. Yeah, for 4 years. So it kind of got into it through the bit before COVID happened, I was just training in the gym. Like I thought I needed to lose weight. It was kind of like the typical like body dysmorphia story. And my personal trainer was like, "Oh, you're actually quite strong. Have you thought about trying powerlifting?" Never even heard of it. I was like, that's the sport for like really big men that lift really big weights, right? That's literally what I thought, because the exposure that there is today just wasn't what it was then. So I was like, no. And then he suggested that we entered a comp. He didn't really know the rules, and I didn't really know the rules. And I ended up bombing out on my first meet.
I saw that earlier. And it was on squats, which is like your main thing.
Yeah. So that was quite the experience. Like a huge part, I think, of who I am as a powerlifter today. That comp like helped me like build that. But it was also like the worst day of my life at the time. This was just so embarrassing because I literally knew none of the rules. But definitely a blessing in disguise. And then I started powerlifting properly when I came to university, because they had like a proper club for it, and it was like my way of meeting my friends at uni, and never really looked back.
So when you did your we won't class the comp where you bombed out as your first comp because totally ignore that one. And obviously then it was lockdown and everything. And your next comp was what, May 21? So there was a decent gap there. Were you coached into your first comp, or did you kind of just do that through the uni, maybe like a uni program or anything?
Yeah, so I had a coach who was the club coach at the uni for a couple of months. And then my home gym, there was actually a powerlifting gym there, and I ended up switching coaches again in Christmas time because he was like in person, and it just felt like the right thing to do at the time. So he coached me into my first powerlifting comp in May. But because it was just post-COVID, like there were no handlers or anything. So I did like the meet with a friend sort of thing. She competed at the same time. But yeah, he wrote my program into it. But it was very different kind of programming to what I'm doing now. Like it wasn't RPE or anything. It was very much you do this every week, which was cool to like experience that and now go from like a completely different training style. But yeah.
Yeah, I think it's good as well that you've had a few different types of coaches. So you've tried different things, and now I guess you know what works for you, obviously, because it's working very well at the moment. You've been hitting some massive numbers lately. And yeah, how long have you been with Ben? He's your coach now, isn't he?
Yeah, so I think I've been in December, it'll be 3 years. Yeah, so 2021 December was when I made the decision to switch to Ben just before my first national comp, which was Bucks early 2022. So yeah, which has been great. Like he's just been fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, it's working. You work well together, and your progress has been brilliant. So before you got into powerlifting specifically, then you said that you obviously went to the gym and stuff. Did you do much in terms of weights, or was it more just cardio, trying to lose weight, or?
So I started the gym when I was 16. Yeah, just after I left school, because originally I played football. But the women's team actually collapsed, and I'm always been such a sporty person. I was like, oh, I just need to do something. And at the time, I don't think I could get a gym membership at my gym till I was 16 anyway. Started going to the gym, mainly did cardio to start with, and then slowly like took myself over to the dark side. Like not really like heavy lifting, but like I started doing like pull-ups, and then kind of was doing more. I started squatting quite quickly, surprise. Not doing much bench, but kind of the odd bits of strength training for like a couple of years, and then started like looking a bit closer at like compound lifts a bit more. Like I think I got my first like 100 kilo squat maybe like late 2018, 2019 January maybe. But they never really progressed. It was almost like, oh, cool, I could do 100. Like, that's cool. That's fine by me. Like 3 digits for me at the time was like massive. And I was just so happy to be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think before you actually get into powerlifting properly, I mean, 100 kilos is a big squat anyway, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's a ridiculous squat. But before you even get into the world of powerlifting, to squat 100 kilos like in any other gym, it's like, oh my, like,
Wow.
I'm an 8 higher than that. I've done it. I've completed it.
Yeah.
So you obviously, we'll talk more about what's coming up and stuff with your lifting in a bit. But I also want to talk about volunteering, because I think you're a very familiar face within British powerlifting at this point. You are. Most weekends, I feel like at one point, most weekends you were at a comp and you were volunteering in some capacity. And I just wondered, when in your lifting career did you start volunteering and regularly get into that? And what roles do you enjoy the most? Would you recommend people getting into volunteering and things?
So I think so because of the club, so I went to Exeter Uni, and it was the Exeter Powerlifting Club there, and they had like really great connections with like the Southwest like regional team that were running all the meets. And I think quite quickly, like as soon as like COVID was over, they were asking for volunteers. And my friend Emma Williams at the time, she was president of the club, and she was like, "Oh, you could do this." So I think the first time I helped out meet, it was to spot and load on the platform. And I was very nervous, like
Not surprised.
yeah. I think like I to be honest, every time before, like not as much now, but you know, like nerves are normal before like volunteering and stuff, because like at the end of the day, it's not your, like, it's their day, and it's, you know, you're responsible for keeping people safe, especially if you're on the platform and whatnot. And it is like an important role to play. But yeah, no, I did a lot of spotting and loading. I think I did some table work, but tended to stick to the spotting and loading because I just liked the feeling of being active, I think. And it was just nice to just like actually be there, like shouting for the lifters and like supporting them. And just, it was just a really feel good feeling. And I think it was almost addictive. That's why I ended up doing it like pretty much every weekend. And then pretty much as soon as the opportunity came up to be a ref, I was like, oh my God, I want to do that, because I felt like I was reffing anyway when I was spotting and loading. Like I was kind of watching, I don't know if you have this, but I was kind of watching lifters go like, oh, I'd give that. Why? I think that's a good lift. Or I'd just be like, all the time, even when I'm watching lifting, I'm like, oh, I wonder what they're going to go for their next attempt. And I make like these predictions. So yeah, I did my refs course. It'll be January 2022. So that was almost a couple of years ago now. And then the first comp I actually refed at was, oh no, January 2023 it was, sorry. First comp I actually refed at was Open Nationals, the last one. I was just chucked into the deep end. I was like, you know what, I can do this. I've been to so many comps now, which was a really good experience. And to be honest, in terms of like, both of the roles, I probably equally loved them just as much. Like to start with, when reffing was very new, I very much really liked that. And I liked, you know, doing that as much as possible just to gain experience, because I think, you know, it's all well and good taking the ref exam, but to actually become a good ref, you have to ref, and you have to, you know, sit there and, you know, have conversations with other refs as well. And I think that's what makes you a good ref, just going through that experience. But yeah, I think definitely like initially, like if you're like new to volunteering, like spotting and loading, helping out on the table are definitely like really good like introduction roles, especially spotting, because you get to do it in a team and you've got people there that will support you and they'll direct you and they'll tell you where you need to be at what time. And it's just a really nice community feeling, which is essentially what powerlifting is all about. So yeah, love volunteering.
I completely agree with that. I actually only spotted and loaded for the first time, I think it was like March this year, and I wasn't supposed, I was there to ref, but they were short on platform crew, so I jumped on in the morning. And I was always just nervous, especially because I think it was for the men as well. And I was like, what if I can't catch it? I mean, I've spotted people in training, so it's not really any different. But I think because you don't know, especially with squats, the speed someone descends, what they're like, any bad habits they have, like especially at a regional level, like people do lose balance and stuff. It's really nerve-wracking. But actually, when you're there, you're like, there's 3, 4, 5 of us being on the bar. You're fine, and you're in safe hands. And people didn't expect me to. I mean, I knew what I was doing, but because it was my first time doing it properly, I was still like, I feel really nervous. And people kind of expected me to know what I was doing, and I knew how to spot, but it was like the confidence to just go in and do it. And so people like, they're so friendly. Everyone helps. Everyone wants to help.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think spotting and loading is a really good place to start. I would say either that or table, but table only really if there's someone else there that is experienced, so they can just show you what to do in case you have questions. And also I feel like platform crew as well. If you're going to get moaned at in a role, it's probably not the platform crew. I feel like if you're on the table and something's put in wrong, people might complain. Most of the time they don't, but platform feels like a bit of a safer spot. And with reffing, I completely agree. You need to ref to be a good ref. Like, you need to get practice. To this day, I still feel guilty every time I give a red light. But I remember when I first passed my refs course, I was so nervous to give red lights. And it's the thing as well as, obviously, you know the rules. You've been in the sport long enough. You know what's a good lift and what's a bad lift. But the first couple of times you ref, I don't know if you were the same. It's like, I feel really under pressure to get this right, even though I'm confident I know the rules. But part of me just doubts myself. I'm like, what have I forgotten? What have I forgotten? What have I forgotten? And it's like remembering the colours. And I always say this to new refs, like, you don't actually need to know the colour system. Like, if you forget, as long as you are clear about whether it's a good lift or bad lift, then if they ask you why, you can tell them, that's fine. Obviously, with experience and like at nationals and stuff, you probably do need to know the colours. So your first time reffing being national probably was terrifying.
Probably. It's weird though, because like I definitely know what you mean with like the colours, but I think because like I can't describe like like the extent to which I volunteered. Like before I even knew the exam, I felt like I knew the rules to like the back of my hand, like even the colours, because I was so engrossed in this, like, okay, powerlifting is literally my entire life. Like, it definitely wasn't like an unhealthy relationship, but I've definitely got a better relationship now in terms of like giving myself like time off and like actually just feeling better for that. But because before that, I would just say yes to every opportunity possible because I just loved it so much. But I think that could definitely be damaging to an extent.
Yeah, but then I guess it also probably helps you become the lifter that you are as well, and to find your actual love for the sport. And that will transition nicely actually into another thing I want to talk about, was how you found going from uni to full-time work and still balancing training. Because I know that's something you've spoken about online before. And it's something that I think you talk about really nicely and honestly. Like, you do genuinely love the sport. And I remember you saying something along the lines of, you have to enjoy it to be able to make it work. And quite clearly, from how much you were just going to every single comp, like, you not even just love training and lifting, like, you love the community, you love the sport. So yeah, any advice for people that are maybe getting towards the end of uni and worrying about balancing lifting and working? Because I think a lot of students do but get in the habit of almost being mostly a full-time athlete, and they need to learn to balance that.
Yeah, for sure. I think I was quite lucky in a way because I also did a placement year at uni, so I was able to kind of experiment with that lifestyle. So if you have that as an option to do a placement year, I definitely recommend it anyway. Like, even outside of powerlifting, like, it's just a great opportunity. But yeah, with powerlifting in mind, it was a really great way to like experiment with like how manageable that was going to be, and whether like that type of work was going to be the right thing, or whether like my powerlifting was going to be the right thing. So yeah, definitely like placement year if you can. And then moving on from that, I guess, just kind of like making it a priority, which sounds kind of like a big deal, because like, oh my God, like, you've just started a new job, might have moved to a completely new place. Like, should powerlifting be a priority? But like, I think in order to, keep that momentum going and keep that like healthy, like training balance and get like the frequencies in that you need, it is important to just kind of stick to it. And, it might be rough to start with, but just kind of like push through that sticking point. Another thing I would say as well, that it hasn't affected me personally, but like what you said about what I was saying, if you don't love it, then you're not going to stick to it. So communicating that with your coach, like, if there's certain exercises that you find really difficult, or like your split's not quite right, like some days are really difficult and it's putting you off even going, then that's something you're going to need to talk about with your coach, because they're going to want to know that, and it's going to be detrimental for your progress and like your love for the sport going forwards. I think that's really important. And then I guess one thing to consider, like, not for everyone, but a big thing that I thought about before I was even looking at jobs was, where can I work where there's actually going to be like a really good powerlifting community? Because that might sound really sad, but it's so important to me. And like, you shouldn't be ashamed to, express that and like make that like one of your priorities. Because if you found a love for something like I have, which I'm sure many other people have, then that's okay. And you're allowed to make that like one of your like non-negotiables. And I'm so glad I did, because I'm so happy here in Wales, because the powerlifting community is huge. And I've got a really sick gym to train at. So yeah, just just recognize what's important to you, I guess, and, you know, really like push that forwards into like life after uni. And I'm sure that your powerlifting success will continue.
We will dive into that part about finding enjoyment and making it a priority. But before that, I wasn't going to bring this up, but I just find it too funny not to. So you say you moved to Wales because there was a gym there. Rumour had it you moved at the same time the new qualifying for British came out. I knew moved to Wales just to have a slightly, I say, an easier time qualifying for Open Nationals. I've realised that you've got Tash in your category in Wales as well, and I feel like her training's going so well, so it's probably not going to actually be any easier, but it's just too funny.
I actually do have proof that I did move in like a week before they made the announcement. So, but I mean, I wouldn't put it past me.
I mean, I would tell you the same, but I think me and Jodie are too close on total. That would be so stressful. I'm not going to say
I'd be here to watch the battle. That would be insane. But we'll see it at British anyway, so you'll both be top 14.
Just to confirm, you obviously did not move to Wales just to qualify for British easier.
Yeah, thank you.
No, training experience, isn't it? Like, it's such a nice gym. Like, you've got a really good facility. And I think that is important what you said about there's no shame in prioritizing your hobby, your sport. Like, even if you don't see yourself as a massively competitive powerlifter, if you love doing it and you want the community, you want the equipment and all of that, there's nothing wrong with that. And you're allowed to find work and jobs and set your life up in an area that gives you that. Like, I live in an area that has no powerlifting gyms. I'm thankful that I've obviously got quite a few friends online and stuff that talk about powerlifting. There are some local lifters, and I've got the facilities at home to train. And to be honest, I've been in full-time work since I started powerlifting. So I've always managed to balance it, even if my schedule just didn't really align with it. Like, powerlifting is negotiable. And I've just always had that. And that kind of, I guess I say privilege. I don't think it's a privilege to have always worked, but, you know. I think people need to realize that there's nothing wrong with prioritizing going to the gym and training. I don't know if you've had this, possibly not, because I guess a lot of your friends powerlifted as well, maybe. But I know for me, like, when I started taking the sport really seriously, and I wouldn't obviously miss out on important occasions with friends, but it'd be little things like, oh, can we go for dinner this night? And I'd be like, oh, well, that's a training night and I'm working until 5, so I have to train. And I'd miss out on maybe like social plans and things like that. And I'd have to basically, like, even to this day, like, I arrange my schedule around my rest days. Like, if I'm socializing, it's on a rest day. And I think some of my friends, it did take them a while to understand that. And now I'm at a place where they completely get it. But I think that's something else that people maybe don't talk about very often. It's, don't be ashamed to be selfish with your time. If it also, it's looking after yourself. It's not just about your numbers on the bar. Like, you're getting movement in.
Definitely. I think that's really important thing to say. I think as much as like, I probably have like more powerlifting friends than normal friends, but I've definitely experienced that as well. And I think even more so with like family as well. And then, you know, especially because when I did start powerlifting, I was living at home as well, and just kind of everyone getting adjusted to that. But like you said, it's like completely more than okay to, you know, make your schedule work around that, because if that's what's making you happy and that's, you know, what's fueling your love for being active, then like there's absolutely no reason not to.
Yeah, I think that was a really good point. And everything obviously you're putting out completely makes sense. And I do think we see a big drop off from, you know, people leaving uni and leaving the sport. And it might just be that they can't find the same community anymore, which, I mean, if you lose your love for the sport after leaving uni, that's also fine. But if it's a way that you can stay active, and also you don't have to powerlift every day. Like, I think a lot of younger lifters, like when people first come to me, they're always asking for like 5 to 6 days a week of lifting. I'm like, you don't need to do that. Like, I've been making amazing progress on 3 days a week. Like, 3 to 5 is probably the optimum range for most people. There's no harm in doing less if you can't fit it into your schedule, if you want to make time for other things as well. I think that's something that people don't really talk about very often as well.
Definitely. I think the thing about uni to powerlifting, uni to grad life as well, is definitely because people can't find it very hard, I think, to sacrifice those social aspects of their lives because of like going into like working life where people aren't used to like powerlifter lifestyles. And I can understand that, because I can imagine that is quite an easy, like, not for myself. I think I don't care. Like, I'd be like, cool, I'm going to train. But like, I can definitely understand like how that happens. And like, if, your social life is just as important as your powerlifting life, that could, overtake that, because at the end of the day, if you've moved somewhere completely new as well, and you haven't, your social life is going to be important. So I do get it, but it is a shame to see people slip off, but then you often see people come back as well. So it's just about, working out what's right for you, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do have that adjustment period where they do drop off for like a year or two. And now, like, I think especially now that we're seeing a lot of people come back, not even necessarily people that have been to uni, like the amount of people that have had maybe kids or gotten married, serious relationships where they kind of, powerlifting was no longer their thing. And now they're like, okay, now I'm ready to come back. And we see a lot of people coming back after a bit of a break, which I had this conversation when I went to Powering Through the other day, actually. Like, I think I had a little bit of a break during COVID. I injured my back just before lockdown. And I think it took me a good year to 2 years to get back. I think it's like 2 years to get properly into training again and taking it seriously, and about a year to start like dabbling back in lifting. And I actually think having that break has made me stronger today than I would have been without it, because I got a break, and it also made me re-find the love of the sport. Like, rather than just being in the same routine over and over again of just training, chasing numbers, whatever else, like I got a mental break and I got to sit back and be like, do I really want to pursue this? And then I think only about a year, 18 months ago, I was like, no, I want to commit to this and I want to push myself again. And a couple of people did say they felt the exact same, because I think most people that have been in the sport for more than like 5-6 years have had some level of a break. And I think a lot of younger people and newer lifters are really scared to do that, but actually it might benefit them in the long run.
Definitely. No, I really like that.
I mean, like, you're going to have a break.
It doesn't look that way. And I'd like to think that I wouldn't, because it's just so nice and like I'm so happy. So why would I? But I do think what you say is really important, and like, just, I think, even if you're not on a break, just like taking a step back sometimes and just reflecting and just thinking about the bigger picture and being like, why do I do what I do? Like, what are my motivations for turning up every day? Like, what am I trying to get out of this? And, if the answers aren't quite right with, what you're doing in your training right now, for like whether that's powerlifting or not, then maybe that's a good thing that you've stepped back and taken a look at that and you can make those adjustments.
Yeah, no, completely. I also think you don't have to take powerlifting seriously to be a powerlifter either. Like, everyone has different goals. Some people want to be really competitive. They want to get to as high a level as they possibly can. Other people just want to have the routine of training and feel strong in themselves, and maybe just add a little bit to their total every few months. And that's absolutely fine. Like, you don't have to be super 100% into powerlifting to also be a powerlifter.
No, for sure. And I think that's a really good thing to say as well, because I think it probably looks that way a lot of the time on social media, with like, is all you see. Like, if someone's got like a lifting account, they probably have like another account and you only really see them lifting, and you're thinking like, oh, this is what I need to do. So I think that's something that I've tried to like recognize and post a bit more about me within the last year or so, because I think promoting that kind of like healthier lifestyle and like being like, oh, it's not like a be all end all. Like, you don't have to just be a powerlifter and do nothing else and focus on your recovery. You can do all these other things as well, and that's normal.
Yeah, and I actually think having other things in your life outside of powerlifting will only benefit your powerlifting as well. Obviously, to an extent, like if you are just a ridiculously busy person, then fitting everything in and finding time to actually have some downtime and recover is difficult. But if all your life is powerlifting and you don't have hobbies outside of it, or a social life outside of it, or just other like a job completely outside of it or something, you're just always going to be thinking about training and your numbers, and you're going to get in your head a lot more. And I think that will also hinder people as well.
Yeah, definitely. That's really important. How do you find that as like, but obviously you're still working full time, but like you're very much like coaching, volunteering, very much like into your own lifting, like going out to Commonwealths. Like, how do you manage that?
I definitely struggle. It got to 11 p.m. last night, and I said to my boyfriend, I was like, I haven't done one thing to relax all weekend, like literally all weekend. I think, I mean, I've said this before, like I am a massive workaholic, but I don't feel like coaching, obviously I do treat as a job, and I do, like, it is a profession, it is a job. But because I enjoy it so much and I enjoy like seeing my lifters progress and all of that and just chatting to them, like as people, I get on with all of my lifters so well that side of it, I do think it feels like I'm almost switching off because I'm completely out of my own training and I'm so invested in other people's that is a big distraction. So I think that in a weird way does help me switch off from my own lifting and my own world. And I have taken a bit of a step back from refereeing and things as well, especially at the moment. So I'm now in the process of cutting down my full-time job so that I can focus obviously more on coaching and make that eventually my full-time income and things. But I need at the moment to actually give myself weekends. So last weekend where I worked the entire time, I've made sure that next weekend or like this weekend coming up, I've actually got social things planned both days. So I have no excuse but to get out of the house and distract myself and do something like that. I noticed it in my last block. I went on one of my best friend's hen do's and then the week after was her wedding. So it was the block out from Commonwealth. So it was a really important training block and I was really stressing about it. And then when I was actually away on the hen do, so we went to Mallorca, so it was abroad. I didn't train at all when I was there. I thought about doing an accessory day. And then when I was there, I was like, there's no point. I'll just add anything missed on during the week when I get home. That time of switching off and then still having a really productive block of training showed me how important it is to completely relax sometimes and completely take time. And that's something I am bad at. And I will admit that I'm bad at. But I have learned my lesson to block out time to actually relax. So,
well, that all sounds very positive that you've kind of like learned. And I think, it is a massive learning process, everything, isn't it? So that sounds good.
Yeah, it is difficult, but I think everyone needs to find their balance and their thing. And like this year has been a super busy year for us. Like we bought a house earlier this year. It needs so much work doing to it. And on top of that, like my coach is going like, it's busier than ever. Launching a podcast because that's what I like to do with my free time. And then obviously like all my other social media and things that I'm doing and trying to volunteer. Like I hosted a meet at the start of the year. It's been a really busy year and I have made really good progress on my list as well somehow. But I also know that in my mind, I'm like, this is my year of really grafting and getting everything settled. Like buying the house was a massive milestone. And now because of that, I can really dive into the coaching world because it's not easy to buy a house if you're self-employed, especially when you're like, I think it's only like my second year on the books of being self-employed. So it isn't easy. So I wanted to get the house and now I feel like I'm pushing to what I want. And then in my mind, I'm like, if I can just get through this year, next year, I can actually cut my hours down even more and I can actually find balance. And I think that will only benefit my lifting. So I'm like, if I can progress this year with all of this chaos going on, how am I going to be next year when I've actually got some level of calm?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something to look forward to.
I'm counting it down. Right, we'll go back to you because you're more interesting than me. So with your training, we'll go into your training. Your training is going so well at the moment. I assume you feel the same. PBs the other day on squat, like massive PBs. Should I talk about how this training block went first?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, yeah, it's been great. Like difficult. I'm very sedentary. I'm very sedentary in my job at the moment compared to like pre-uni. Like I also just can't sit down for long periods of time. So even before I was working, like you wouldn't see me sat down for long periods. I'd be like up and out doing something. So definitely been like adjusting to that, which means more warm-ups, investing in like sports massage, recovery, like very much priority at the moment. And I feel like just doing all those things has definitely made like a huge difference this block. Like sleep is like non-negotiable. But yeah, this training block has been fab, especially in terms of like squat and deadlift. Like I'm sure bench is to come, and I've been promised that within the next 8 weeks bench is going to be more exciting, so that's good. But yeah, no, I think especially with my squat, like I've said, and you'll know, like I'm quite a strong squatter, and I always have been. But I think now that we've really like worked out the tech that's like best for me, it's just gonna like take off. And it has like just pause squats as well. This block have been so good. And yeah, I've just really enjoyed it as well. Like just pushing myself, and like I think previously, like going for like a heavy squat, I've maybe not felt as confident or thought about the weight that was on the bar quite a lot. And I've definitely found that within the last couple of blocks, I've not been doing that so much. I've just been backing myself a lot better, which has definitely like contributed to like the success of the block. And then in terms of deadlifts as well, like probably the same kind of attitude, like just kind of really dialing in on tech still and just getting it right. Like it's just my squat and deadlift ratio has been such a battle. And yeah, for sure. So yeah, no, really good. Like I'm so excited for British. I think it's going to be a really good meet.
So before we dive into British and your prep for that and everything, a couple of things I thought of as you were talking. So first thing is with squats. So we are quite similar with our squats and our deadlifts.
Yeah.
And, you know, I think both of us squats are our favourite lift. Did you ever have this moment when you were first kind of getting into powerlifting? I mean, you might have loved squats from day one, but I remember I suddenly had this like epiphany moment when I was still pretty new to the sport where I was like a little bit stagnant on squats and I was really struggling to progress them. And then suddenly I was like, I think it's just because it feels heavy on my back. And I almost had to have this moment where I was just accepting that any weight above, I think at the time it was like anything above 120 was going to feel super heavy, but I could still move it. And I personally think a lot of like lifters when they're quite new, I think it's maybe particularly with women, I feel like women tend to be a bit more nervous, especially when they first get into the sport. It's like, because the weight feels heavy, you freak out so much and that stops you from progressing more than anything else. And I just didn't know if you ever had a moment like that where you just had to accept that it's going to feel heavy.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like the transition from like high bar to low bar was like massive in that as well, because I think like typically most like lifters before they start powerlifting do not really squat low bar, it's more high bar. And like everyone was saying like in the club, like, oh, Millie, you need to try low bar, your squat's going to go up lows. I was like, okay, I will. And then like, you suddenly like putting your body in such an uncomfortable positioning and it's so off-putting. And I definitely know exactly what you mean. And I think, you know, that's very much been a thing until I kind of noticed the value in like taking my time with my unrack. Like as soon as I kind of nailed that down, it was a bit more like, okay, doing that feels so much better. I'm not as scared anymore because it doesn't feel as heavy. It's not as rushed. So yeah, I definitely know what you mean. Like, I think that's definitely quite a common thing. And I definitely about like the apprehension of just like, okay, if it feels heavy on your back, it's just, you feel like it won't feel good, even though it usually does. But like, it's just that feeling, isn't it? It's quite overwhelming and can't think about anything else.
I also feel, now I'm thinking about, I feel like as soon as you actually start the rep as well, like you don't notice it on your back anymore. Like you're so in the zone of actually doing the squat that you don't notice that it feels heavy. Like you just go. And I think something that's really helped my squat over the last like couple of months where I've been progressing again, it's like I don't think about it too much. Like I just trust my body. And I think it's taken me a long time to fully trust my body to just remember how to squat every time.
Yeah, definitely. I know what you mean.
And I also think with rigs, you have to trust yourself if you want to get the benefit out of them.
Yeah. Oh, what would we do without rigs?
To be fair, you are one of the main reasons I bought them. I had a conversation with Lewis Smith and he said about getting stiff sleeves and I'd already thought about it a couple of times. And then I was just looking at different people's squats and I was like, well, Millie has quite a fast descent and I feel like my squats already feels better when I have a fast descent. But SBD sleeves really freak me out because I know they don't really give a lot of spring back. Like they feel people that have a slower squat, I think. And yeah, then I messaged you and I asked if they're worth it and if they last quite well. And you said that, you know, your squat feels a lot better in them than in the SBDs. So I bit the bullet. So all these SBDs I'm getting, you were getting the credit for. The other thing I was going to ask as well. So with deadlift, again, I think we're quite similar with this. Your deadlift is progressing really well now. Like, just want to say that. But did you have a moment where you kind of realized that you were just classing it as your worst lift and you got in this mindset? Because I know I'm in this again now and I really noticed it in my training the last couple of weeks. I'm trying to snap out of it where I don't expect much. Like if squat's going really well, I don't expect deadlift to really progress above my squat. And I always write off my deadlift before I give it a chance rather than approaching it with the same confidence and intent that I would with squats.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think not so much now, but I was really in like a rut with it like a year or so ago, or a couple of years ago, where it would be like, I think my personal experience very much like, well, you were exactly saying like subtotal specialist in a way, but well, you're way more subtotal than I am. I'm just squat. But no, I think it was really hard as well in competitions because I'd be like, oh, cool. Like I never keep up with like the scoreboard in comps. I'm very much just like, I keep to myself. Like, I think you said this on one of your other podcasts, like you have to focus on yourself. Otherwise you just end up having a bad day. But, you know, I very much know that after like squat and bench, I'm pretty much like, you know, in the lead for like my previous comps anyway, as a junior. And then it is quite difficult. I think I found previously going into deadlifts and, you know, like coming out first, do my deadlifts after like all of that work. But yeah, I think it's just getting past that mindset. I mean, I'm not going to say it's easy because it's not. And like, you'll know that as well. And I definitely have like worse days where like deadlifts feel rubbish. And especially because a lot of the time, like my training, my deadlift will always be like my last lift of the day, like even if not in comp. And like, there's a lot of pressure on that as well, because I've had like a good session and then, oh my God, I've got to do my deadlift. Like, what if this goes really bad? And then I walk away feeling rubbish. But yeah, I think it's just, you've just got to forget, haven't you, that like anything in the past, and you just got to go, cool, it's another lift that I'm going to go and smash this. The same intent as squat, same intent as bench. Like, this is, you know, just as important. Like, I'm equally as capable of lifting this weight off the floor as I am of putting it on my back. But yeah, it's definitely difficult. I think as well. I think the main thing as well is a lot of people do enjoy deadlifts, and there's a lot of pressure to enjoy that lift because it is typically like everyone's like favorite lift because it just is. So yeah,
I completely feel that. My deadlifts are always at the end of my SBD, and I always, especially when I was training later, like my training's a bit earlier now, so it's not so bad. I wouldn't rest in between sets. Like my rest breaks are generally quite short on all 3 lifts anyway, but deadlifts especially, I would just want to get them done. And then I was like, well, no wonder they're feeling terrible. I'm literally going up 30 seconds. They're not going to feel good. And obviously you do have fatigue from the session and stuff as well. But I think with squats and bench, I'm quite good at, well, not so much squats because they are first, but like I'm quite good at just moving on and moving to the next. But for some reason, when it gets to deadlifts, I just can't do that. And it is something I'm actively working on. But I think the same thing as well, like seeing people be like, why wouldn't you enjoy deadlifts? It's the easiest one. You just rip it off the floor. You just rip it off the floor. And I'm like, that doesn't work. I think it was, is it Nonzo, the really like 120 junior who's like insane?
Yeah.
I remember him being like, deadlifts are the easiest. Like you just pick it up. And I was like, obviously for him, that's fine. But they're not, you don't just pick them up. Like, I think the deadlift, the one that my technique on deadlifts, I think is the one I struggle with the most as well, to be fair, which probably doesn't help. But yeah, I think at comps and stuff as well, like people are like, oh, it's just deadlifts left, like it's fine. And there's like, to be fair, it probably is easier to not make technical errors on deadlifts than the other two. Like there are, the failures for deadlift are a little bit more obvious, I think, but it's just, I don't get it. I'm trying to love them. Maybe one day, maybe next year will be the year of the deadlift.
I think it's just a work in progress, isn't it? And like at the end of the day, like I think the best way to look at it is like swings and roundabouts. Like just because like you don't feel great about deadlifts doesn't mean like you're gonna feel great about squat next block. I think, you know, like each of the lifts have their own, you know, feelings like in different blocks. So I think it's just like remembering it, like viewing it as like, oh, it's not, I hate deadlifts. It's, oh, deadlifts just don't feel great right now. And that's okay. And just moving past that and sticking through it, like just persevering. Because I think just doing that myself has like taught me a lot about like, I don't know, it's just like, it's the same as like anything within powerlifting, like the accountability and just pushing through. And like, I think, you know, those kind of, I think the deadlift PBs are the best PBs because you work so hard for them. Like you'll probably relate to that. Like I'd much rather like, not much rather, but a 2.5 kilo PB on deadlift feels a lot better than like a 5 kilo PB on squat, because it just means so much more because of the like mental gains and the physical gains. It's just, it's just huge.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. Deadlift PBs, like I'll be happy for a solid month when I hit a deadlift PB. Like, at least. Someone actually said to me, one of my friends said to me not that long ago when I was saying like, I just get so frustrated because my deadlift is just so far behind my other 2 lifts. And she was like, yeah, but your deadlift isn't behind your other 2 lifts. Your other 2 lifts are just ahead. Yeah, I feel like it's a really nice way to spin it, to be like, okay, you know, I need to stop thinking that deadlift is my worst lift. It's a fact, but it doesn't mean it's bad. Like my deadlift's not bad. Like I think I've pulled 190 in comp. Like that's a pretty decent deadlift.
That's a pretty big deadlift.
So much pressure. I think because my bench not in comp apparently, but in training, my bench, I know like competitiveness wise with other lifters in like my weight category, it's like my bench puts me ahead, and my squat is decent enough that I'm normally one of the top squatters in my flight. and then vice versa. That's fine. But then people are pulling 200 become a common deadlift for women.
I know. It's cool, but yeah, it's mental. I think it's really interesting what you're saying there about like your bench in training, because I think that's the thing as well with deadlifts. Like you have to view the lifts completely different in terms of like long-term thing. And like the weekend was like a one-off for like a deadlift PB. Like I have not pulled a deadlift PB in training since like 2022. Like that was rare. And I think it's reminding yourself of like the bigger picture, and it's like, oh, I don't need to pull this to pull that in comp. Like it's just, yeah, I think it's all mindset, isn't it? Like it's actually nuts how much like mental stuff goes into all of this.
Yeah, I actually had that conversation the other day as well about, well, one thing was talking about my squats for Commonwealth, because I feel like I've given myself, I'm not going to say numbers, but like a bit of a cap, because I don't necessarily want to go RP 10 because I am wanting to do British just after, and I'd rather play it a little bit safe. And then my friend was like, yeah, but just because you haven't lifted, like the number I planned was basically what I would hit in training on like a normal block if I was just going to run a normal training block and not like peak into comp. And she was like, yeah, but you don't have to lift it in training to be able to do it on the platform. Like you're not going to be fatigued. You're hopefully going to feel more fresh. Like you can set your expectations a little bit higher rather than being super conservative. And that was one thing that I thought was I need to remember, and I know this, I say this to clients all the time, like you don't need to go heavy in training to go heavy on comp day. Like one of my lifters, Jay, like he lifts very sub-max in training. Like he hit a 30 kilo squat PB in comp. I think he might have done 25 more than he'd ever done in training, but he managed to add like 30 kilos to his comp PB from what he'd done in training, just because in training he can't go heavy. And there are not people like that. And actually I'm like that with my deadlift. Like I can't max out my deadlift regularly in training. Like I really can't. And I think that's where mentally as well I struggle with deadlift, because I know on squat and bench I can go pretty heavy pretty regularly, and I see the reward and I see the PBs. Deadlifts I don't. But actually historically in comp I pull deadlift PBs more than I do squat or bench PBs.
That's wild. But yeah, you're right. Like it's just reminding yourself of that, like exactly what you just said. Like it's fine. Huge deadlift PB incoming soon for you.
So before we go into your plans and goals for British, on comp day, you said that you're very in your own zone. What are you like as a lifter on comp day? Like I've seen the squat videos, you obviously get hyped for squats. But as a general rule, are you quite a hyped lifter? Are you quite a calm lifter?
I think it depends. Like I'm very like mixed. I think I'll always be a bit more hyped for squats because like I need to like back myself, and I find that just being a bit more aggressive tends to work. But yeah, it will just, bench is very chill, like always so chill. Like I won't rarely even have my headphones in for bench, whereas like squats, like I don't want to take them off. Like I'm quite happy just like forgetting about everyone else and just focusing on me and my squats, and that's cool. I like that. And then deadlifts, I think it's kind of similar to squats in a way. Like I do just have to hype myself up, because I think it's reminding myself again, and I definitely need it more on deadlift than I do squat, just that like extra like confidence, I think. And if I go out there like I own the platform, then like I am gonna own it, and I'm gonna lift the damn weight off the floor. That's like literally how I approach it. But I think with squats as well, I don't know if you find this, but I find because it's my best lift and because it's the first lift, I find that the pressure is very much there, and I'm like, also this is gonna set the tone of the day. And I feel like I've never really had like a bad squat performance in comp, and I'm not sure how I would deal with that, and I'm sure it will happen at some point, and like that's totally okay, because I'm all here for the learning process. But I think very much the hype that I bring like allows me to kind of get over those thoughts and feelings, and it just kind of puts me where I need to be and like in that right frame. Not so much for my opener, like I've got to dial in for my opener and execute, otherwise we won't be able to do the things that I want to do. But yeah, it's very mixed. I've heard I'm quite an easy person to handle, but we'll see.
No, I can imagine like you probably are quite easy, because obviously you trust, I take Ben handles you at most meets, doesn't he? And you've worked together long enough, like you can trust him. Like historic comps, they've always gone to plan and they go well. But no, I do agree with you about squats. Like I think everyone feels nervous for their opening squat, no matter what weight you everyone feels nervous. But I think as someone who relies on their squat for quite a big chunk of their total, and like I wouldn't be confident to pull whatever I miss out on squats. Like I would not be comfortable just to pull it. Like when people are like, oh, I'll just squat 5 kilos left because I'd rather pull it at the end. No, that's not me. I'd rather squat 5 kilos more and pull 5 kilos.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's that pressure that, you know, they do set the tone for the day for everyone. But if you are a squatter, I think the pressure you feel to get them right, because you know that if not, you're not just going to like have like really struggle to get out of that mindset for the rest of the day of like it setting the tone, but you just know that it's a big chunk of your total gone as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well. And I think as well, as much as like I'm very much like I live very much in my own world, I'm still very aware of like other people. And I think on comp day, like I literally experienced, I think I can't even remember how many meets I've done. It must be like 12 or 13, I'm not sure. But I missed my first ever squat in comp, apart from the comp that I bombed out on, obviously. But like in terms of like on strength, at Bucks earlier this year, and I was quite apprehensive as how I was going to ever feel if I failed a squat on platform, because like, I'd never done it before. But like it was actually fine, but I was more worried about what people were going to say to me, because it's that feeling of like everyone knows that that's my favorite lift. How are other people going to speak to me after that? Like not like, oh, that was really bad, but more like I don't want people to be like, oh, are you okay? And like drawing loads of attention to it, because I'm very much like, okay, that's happened, move on, like it's the rest of the total now. So I think that's probably like the worst feeling to like get past, is like if that ever happens, but it's all part of the process. And like I think doing that now and like just feeling a lift in comp and like knowing how it feels is like probably a good thing, because like it's fine and like I know it now.
Yeah, completely. And I also think like I'm sure most people will agree with this. If you're there supporting someone at comp and they fail a lift, just pretend it hasn't happened until the comp's over. Just don't be like, oh, how are you feeling after that? Unlucky. Oh, that's a shame. Like, no. Just pretend it's happened. I hate it so much. As a regular 6-9 competitor, and I went 9 for 9 until the day's over. I wanted to ask you as well. I mean, firstly, Bucks, yes, you did miss your last squat, but you did also set a record on your second squat.
Yeah, that's now been taken, but still.
That's fine, you still had it. Your last comp, I wanted to ask you what your last comp was like. So Euro Muscle Show, that was the first year they'd done it, wasn't it?
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I think off the back of like the last couple of years, I've done like a lot of very competitive comps as like not a very competitive person. I'm just competitive for myself, I think. And it was great to kind of do Euro Muscle, because there was no like weight classes that you weren't competing against people in your weight class. I still cut down to my own weight class for like, you know, my own competitive reasons. But it was just fab. Like I loved it. It was great to just kind of experience like a completely different style comp, like just to be lifting with other lifters in different weight classes, and to just not really feel like the competitive pressure to like place or anything, and just pull whatever was there on the day. It was really, really fun. And it was a super meet, because I PB'd all of my lifts. So, and it was, I really wanted to go to Amsterdam for ages as well. So it was just great to go on like a holiday, and it was like perfect timing just before I moved out as well. So it was such a good comp. Like, I think like that might be one of my favorite comps yet. Apart from that was literally the first time that I've had to split a cut before weight, even though I didn't even need to make weight, which is just ironic, but yeah.
In a way though, I guess having the experience of having to split before you make weight and having to then recomp a comp where it doesn't really matter is a good thing, because at least you know you can still have a fantastic meet even if that happens. Like your biggest total so far, 460 total, like you said, you PB'd all of your lifts, like you can't complain. I think sometimes as well, because there was no pressure on the meet in terms, like you would have had your own goals going in, I'm sure, and there would have been some level of pressure from yourself, but it, like you said, wasn't a weight class meet. It's just go in, have fun, and just see what happens, and your performance reflected it. I also wanted to ask you, you mentioned that you're not really a competitive with other people. So that was one of the questions I want to ask. Like, what do you think like drives you? Is it just competing against yourself? Do you sometimes find seeing other lifters do really well helps you kind of feel more motivated, or like anything like that? Or are you just very much your own bubble?
It's just a really good question. And like, I think the reason why I say so motivated is because, so when I first started going to the gym, it was very much like, oh, I have to do this because I want to lose weight, I need to be better, whatnot. And it was very much like a no option kind of thing. But very quickly, I became very addicted to seeing results, whether that was results from like what I looked like, results in what I was lifting, results in like how quickly I could run on treadmill. I was very, very much consumed by like that data and just seeing things go up. And I genuinely think I've also like, not that I haven't worked for it, but I'm very lucky in the fact that I've never been injured. I work with a really good coach. So like my numbers have like constantly gone up. Like obviously I work hard as well, but yeah, I think just seeing things go up and like not even just my numbers though, like just my enjoyment in the sport and like my like mindset and like how much that's got better. And I'm just very much like consumed by all of that. And I think genuinely like that has played a huge part in what like keeps me motivated. It's just the feeling of it, like the feeling of just like doing better. Like each time, like, I think in school, like I found that I was never really good at anything, and like I've really struggled with that. And then as soon as I found, you know, the gym and like this kind of like powerlifting, like addiction, well, not addiction, but you know what I mean. This like the way it just consumed me. I think just like that's just motivated me so much in terms of like everything. And I think, you know, like I've never really said that out loud, but like looking back, like it's definitely just a huge part of it. And I think it's just as well like what I said before, like I absolutely love it. And I think I'm very much like if it's something I want to do, I'll give it my all. And that it just shows, hopefully. So yeah.
No, I really love that answer. I was actually going to ask you because I was thinking about this earlier. Like when I had Hannah on the other day, we were talking about her injury, and I think Quinn, when I had her on, she's so new that I don't think she's really dealt with any yet. But I was like, I feel like I've never seen you really talk about injuries or anything, and I guess that means that please don't now get one. But then, like you said, you've worked with Ben for so long as well. Like he understands you and how you work, and I guess if anything started to flare up even slightly, you would be able to adapt and work around it. And I also just want to like touch it because people talk like injuries can happen at any point. Like anyone can get injured. It doesn't have to be something you've done wrong. Like it can happen.
No.
But I do think people normalize being injured a bit too much in the sport. Like at the end of the day, we're going to the gym. Like, yes, when you get to an elite level, you're obviously lifting loads that maybe your body isn't going to be comfortable lifting regularly all the time, but then you regulate your training to manage that. But I do think there's become this rhetoric that it's normal to be injured because you're an athlete. And I'm like, well, it's not normal to be injured. Like it happens and you shouldn't panic, but it shouldn't be just deemed as completely normal either.
No, definitely. Like I think that's quite a common theme, and it's almost, I don't want to say it, but it's almost a slight scapegoat, I think, for some people, more typically younger people, I'd probably say. And yeah, it's interesting actually thinking about that. But I actually did lie because I have been injured, but it was right at the beginning. So literally before that first comp in 2021, when COVID was still kind of like hitting a miss. I was working in a supermarket, my local co-op, and we still had to wear like face masks at the time. You have no idea where I'm going with this, but it's relevant. I was wearing a face mask at the time and I had really bad hay fever, so I kept having to sneeze into the mask, but because obviously I didn't want to have to keep changing them, I was holding back my sneeze. And because I was holding back my sneeze, I actually busted a load of intercostal muscle, literally like a couple of weeks out. I know. A couple of weeks out from my first comp, and it was so painful. And I literally I think in that comp I deadlifted 140, but like a couple of weeks before I couldn't pick up a bar with 110. Like I was on like cocaine and stuff because it was so painful. I started to go to work, and obviously it was like manual labor as well. But yeah, no, that recovered pretty quickly. And like I don't get a flare up, but sometimes like if I've not moved enough, I know about it. But I'm quite good at getting my steps in. But yeah, that's my funny injury story.
That's not where I expected that to go. But I mean, it's fine. It's fine. You still competed. You still did really well.
Yeah, exactly.
And you learned your lessons. Just let the sneeze out.
Yeah.
That's so funny. But yeah, no, I think people need to stop normalizing injury. Like, again, don't panic if it happens, but there's no point acting as if it's just a completely normal thing. And I think what you said about people using it as a bit of a scapegoat, I completely think that's true, especially when people if they get injured somewhat early on as well, and then they just use it as an excuse why they're never going to be competitive or they're never going to be any good, that sort of thing. And it's like, well, no, I think my camera's just died. Well, no, doesn't necessarily mean that you're, never going to be good. You just need to look after your body and rehab it. But
yeah, definitely.
Okay. I haven't got many questions left, and my camera has just died. I think the main thing I really want to talk about now was basically just how you're feeling going into British. And I did also want to ask you your opinions on the new qualifying procedure as well. So if maybe we talk about this British first, just because obviously it's not too far away now. I think, is it like 8 weeks away?
Yeah, 8 weeks this week, so on Thursday, I think. So yeah, no, I'm really, really excited for the British because I love like national comps, and it feels like ages ago because obviously they changed the structure for the international calendar and everything. So last year's British was literally in March, wasn't it? So it feels like so long ago since that competition. So I'm really excited for it because I've got lots of friends doing it, and then my boyfriend's doing it as well. So it'll be really good to go up and compete as well. Like I remember saying last year, like how cool it would be to compete in Open Nationals the following year. So it's really cool to be able to say that like I'm going to do it now. But yeah, no, feeling really good. I've definitely got one big goal, and I just kind of want to enjoy it aside from that. So yeah.
No, I mean, you have told me your goal, but I won't make you say it on here.
I can say so. The current British junior squat record for the under 76 class, which I have had my eye on for the last couple of years or so, is 185. And then this weekend just gone, I squatted 182.5. But because it's an open comp and not junior comp, I will have to load 187.5, which is fine because I'm capable and I'm going to back myself.
No, I definitely think it's within the realm of possibility. I definitely think it is. And also, like, I think it's really cool that you're getting to do. It sounds really silly, but I feel like the reason I really want to do this year's nationals is it's because it's the last one before things change.
Yeah.
And I mean, in the 84s, I mean, I should still qualify. Obviously, you don't ever know who's going to turn up, and I would imagine you'll still qualify for the 76s. But it's like the last one where everyone's going to be there. And I hopefully a lot of people will make the most of that. So I think it'll be like, I'm hoping it'll be like a big community feel to it as well as it's like the last one. Because I think the last Open National at Nottingham Strong, I don't know if it's just because it was in quite a small venue, but it was pretty packed out, at least for the weekend when I was there. Not sure about the week.
Yeah.
But it just felt like a really great place to be, and an atmosphere to be in. And a lot of people wouldn't have been there if they weren't obviously competing in lifting, or a lot of people wouldn't have been there if their friends weren't competing or lifting. And if they're going to limit the number of people entering next year, then we don't know what the crowd is going to feel like. Like, are people going to travel to go and watch just to go watch nationals? Or are they only going to go if it's either one of their close friends or their lifters are going to be there or their family? Like, you don't know what it's going to be like. So I feel like one last big party with everyone. Yeah,
definitely. It's going to be really interesting.
How are you feeling about the new qualifying procedure?
So I think it's great for the sport in a way because you know, like in terms of like watching purposes, like obviously like at internationals, like even our national comps at the moment, they're focusing a lot on like prime time, and like, you know, condensing it down to 14 lifters will make it more appealing to watch, whatnot, and like it should grow like that. But I mean, it also has its negatives. Like, it means that a lot of people that are just not going to be able to ever have the chance to compete in Open. But I just hope that with these other comps that they've introduced, like the Southern Qualifier, the Northern Qualifier, that they should hopefully be able to meet a similar kind of standard so people can still have that same kind of experience, I guess. I know they won't be competing in Open, but I think just the feel of like a really well organized like national comp in a way will still be something really good for like people to work towards. My one thing that I have said, which I don't think many people have spoken about in terms of this, is the fact that obviously you have that your winners from each comp, you know, your top three at Open, they automatically get a spot, like the winner of English, winner of Welsh, winner of Scottish, whatnot. But then obviously you have the remaining spaces, which is like the top 14 on GL, which haven't been filled, right? But I have a little issue with this because obviously lifters that are lifting at British Open, you know, the standard of like, you know, reffing, not even the reffing, but like just the warm-up room, like it's all going to be like top notch like level, and like it should be like that at every comp. Like, we're working towards that as a federation, right? But it's not at the moment. And I think, you know, potentially there'll be lifters that are lifting in, you know, climates that aren't quite to that level, like, you know, like we're getting quite a lot of new refs into the sport, and like I said, like I think you become a better ref and you ref more, whatnot, and it's quite easy to, you know, I've made mistakes with refereeing. I'm sure you have. I'm sure everyone has. And I think like at these regional comps, like those kind of mistakes like happen like a little bit more. And I think, you know, that it's quite easy for like lifters to get not easy, like for them to be like lifting against a different standard and then suddenly have to come to this comp. I'm struggling to get across what I mean, but
no, I completely get what you mean. I do get what you mean. And to be honest, I completely agree. So I don't think they've explained the remaining spaces that well at this point. Like, it depends. Do you have to compete at one of these qualifiers to get a remaining space?
Yeah.
Or can you just enter based on a regional total? I think that needs to be clarified.
Definitely.
I would hope it has to be one of the qualifiers just to keep the standard at least the same across the board.
Yeah, definitely.
But I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Definitely. I think it's gonna be really interesting in terms of timing as well, because there's gonna have to be obviously like a cut-off date from when you can enter. And does this mean that everyone's gonna want to enter the comps that are like last minute possible to just like keep pushing their total as much as possible? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think
so.
I think no, sorry, carry on.
I think that's it's just gonna be really like, to me, like, okay, if I don't run Welsh next year, that's gonna be like what, not March, like April, May time. That's, you know, my total might be big enough then, but is it going to be big enough by the time the date's cut off to get a place at Open Nationals? Am I going to have to compete again? Like, are the comp space is going to fill out really quickly because everyone's thinking the same thing? Like, I don't know how they're going to, I don't know whether people are going to think about it like that, but I would have thought so, because, you know, like if you can get a space, you can get a space and everyone's going to be fighting for them. And, you know, as the sport becomes more competitive like that, and there's more people in it, that's just the way it's going to be. So yeah,
I completely think this. I think a lot of people have thought that, but like you said, it's not really been spoken about too much. I think it will also be interesting. Like, I assume the cutoff will still be similar about 5 weeks out from the comp is when they normally cut off entries.
Yeah.
But then I'm like, well, are people going to want to wait until last minute to qualify though? Because then they're going to do two comps somewhat close together. Like, let's say the last comp is in October and entries close the end of October, or like September and entry close in October. You're then going to have to compete, say, October and November, which for a lot of people is okay. But if you're trying to put up your best performance as possible, that's two meets very close together. So actually, like, if it was me, I'd rather, I think, just compete at the beginning of the year, like either or like middle of the year, to give me a good few months post the previous nationals to build my total where I can. Try and have a super meet of some level, and then qualify with that and hope it's enough. But then, like you say, you don't want to miss out. Like, what if you miss 2.5 days?
This is the thing. Like, what if one of your like top competitors enters this meet that's 5 weeks out, and you're currently nominated 14th, and they could bump you off? Do you decide to enter and like try and save your place, or it's just it's going to be interesting. And I think, like you said, like you would have thought, hopefully they'll make the places only available at like the qualifier comp, so it does cap people off from doing that, because it will just destroy like the purpose of doing the qualifier comps anyway, because then what's even the point? Like, we might as well just all do it if we're going to keep competing late. So yeah,
it'll be interesting. I do think I think it's mostly a positive change. The only other thing that I'm a bit confused by, which I think it was spoken about by JBS on the Saturday podcast, it was saying about how they're still going to have a prime time, because when it was first announced, I thought, okay, well, 14 is the maximum you're allowed in each flight, so I guess they're just going to do one flight per weight class, which in my head was really good, because it's like, if you're like in my weight class, let's say top 14, there probably is going to be quite a big difference in strength. Like, at the moment, there's 3 or 4 girls really far ahead, then there's like 5 or 6 of us clustered close together, and then there's a bit of a gap to like another group. And so the top 14 for the 84s will probably be quite spread out, and it'd be a really lovely opportunity for anyone that's ranked like 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th, 14th to compete with the top ranked girls. But then obviously in the 76s, it'll be different, and it'll actually be really exciting to watch in the 76s, because I think top 14 are all going to be very, very close. And in my mind, prime time doesn't really make sense, because you're still going to, like, you might as well only let the top 7 go to nationals if you're going to just have 7 people flights.
Yeah, exactly.
Time.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same page as you with that as well. Like, and I think, you know, especially like you say, especially with the 84s, like if it's the top 3 or 4 that are pretty much close together, then the only comp they're going to need to do is the open anyway, and then no one's going to really, as someone in a weight class, you want to be competing with like the top people in your class, and it is a great experience. And just so I think it will be a shame if that is how they choose to run it. But like you said, I think most of it's all positive change, so I'm looking forward to it anyway. But it's a long way off still, but we'll see.
Yeah, and I mean, to be fair, it could change again before then. You never know.
Exactly. I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah, I think for the most part, it's a really good change. Like we said, it is just the flights thing that I'm mostly a bit confused about. I would imagine qualifying, it will have to be at one of the qualifying meets rather than just entering with the total from a regional. But I guess we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
I'm also used to see the qualifying for the qualifier meets. So like at the moment we have like the English qualifying total. I assume Welsh, Northern Ireland, Scotland, they all have their qualifying totals. Are we still going to have those, and are they going to be the same across all of those groups? The Northern as well, are they going to have the same, or is it going to be similar to how entries for Manchester Open were this year, where it was they basically just let the people in with the highest gel points?
Yeah, maybe it's all like really unsure at the moment, isn't it? It'll be good when we get some clarity, but I doubt it'll be until at least after this year's Open. But we'll see. Yeah,
I think it'll probably be a while, and I also think it might end. I mean, with English, I probably shouldn't slag off English powerlifting on here, but I feel like with the shambles that is the English, they're probably going to host it last minute. They're going to announce maybe like March time what the new qualifying procedure is, and then the English won't host a meet until November, like a week before British or something like. It's going to be some level of shambles, but it's fine. It'll be interesting to see.
At least you're prepped for the worst case scenario.
I'm ready. I'll just compete whatever weekend. It's fine. Okay. I think, to be fair, that was pretty much everything I wanted to chat to you about. We covered volunteering. We covered obviously transitioning to work and like what you're like as a lifter. Is there anything else you wanted to chat about? I don't remember. Do you do coaching?
No, not coaching at the moment.
No. Okay. So if people want to follow you, where can they find you?
So you can find me at m.illylifts, which is Millie Lifts with a full stop after the end, on Instagram, and then on TikTok I'm just Millie Lifts, but I'm mostly active on Instagram.
Okay, perfect. Was there anything to cover?
No, I think we've chatted about most things. I think just if you don't enjoy lifting, let your coach know. I mean, like, there's so much to love about this sport, and I think there's so many different things you can do and try, and I really just love like seeing people also enjoy it just as much as I do. So if you're listening to this and you're stuck in a bit of a rut right now, just communicate, or switch things up, like change your scenery. Like, there's so much to love about this, and if you stick through it, the reward at the end is really good. So yeah,
I think that's a really good note to finish on. And just to add to that as well, like, if you're not enjoying something in your program, like let's say your days are too long, or there's a few exercises that you dread every single week, you don't need, I mean, other than SBD, you don't need any specific thing in your program. Like even SBD, you can take a break from SBD. So communicate with your coach if you're unhappy with anything you're doing in training. And it doesn't mean your coach is doing anything wrong. It just literally means that something isn't right for you and you need to find what you enjoy. Don't be afraid to change your days around. And if you want to take a break, that's also okay. It doesn't mean you can't come back and get stronger.
Yeah. Lovely.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much for joining me.
No worries. Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.